The first thing a traveler noticed upon crossing the border into Coppermarch was the rustle of living ink. Every exposed arm, scalp, or ankle gleamed with patterns that drifted like clouds on skin. Anger flared in jagged crimsons. Affection fluttered in rose gold feathers, and quiet contentment spread in slow, rippling greens. A marketplace could be read like a mood ring. Bargains, sealed beneath pulsing lavender confidence, lovers huddled in candlelit alleys where their swirling maroons intertwined. These tattoos were not etched by needles, but awakened in adolescence, coaxed out of the blood by some quirk of Coppermarch inheritance. They were expected, cherished, and above all, visible. No citizen was truly naked. Their hearts wore the clothes, and so the absence of ink was more than unusual. It was a breach of etiquette, a superstition, a potential crime. Ryan Forgekeep understood this better than anyone. In the dim heat behind his anvil, he hid blank skin beneath soot and layered leather, letting sparks bounce off a face perpetually shadowed by his hood. Apprentices joked that he was born in a furnace because no one recalled seeing him anywhere else. When he strode through town, gloves pulled to the elbow, the air around him cooled despite the brand-new plowshares clinking at his belt. Some whispered he was a null, the rumored soulless whose bodies never blossomed with color. Yet the barrows needed horseshoes, the militias needed spearheads, and Ryan Steele sang truer than any harp. Folk tolerated the mystery the way they tolerated thunderstorms, with wary gratitude. The Forgekeep lineage had been blacksmiths since the first hammers rang off the copper cliffs. Ryan's father had died under a collapsed mine shaft, his mourning tattoos a washed-out gray on the corpse. His mother's ink faded to translucent husks before she followed 2 winters later, grief gnawing her hollow. Ryan, 12 at the time, waited for the telltale first shimmer on his own skin. Anger, sorrow, anything. Nothing appeared. Priests prescribed pilgrimages. Artisans offered ceremonial piercings. Charlatans flogged potions brewed from squid ink and prayer. He tried them all, and the mirrors stayed stubbornly blank. At 16, he took sole command of the forge. At 26, he was the rare adult in Coppermarch whose body was a silent ledger. When sentinels made their quarterly rounds, he doused the kiln, pulled sleeves down, and prayed the smell of hot iron would disguise the colder stench of fear. One late spring morning, while he quenched a cleaver destined for the Royal Butchers' Guild, the tannery bell announced a visitor. She stepped through billows of steam as if they were stage curtains, and Ryan's usually careful breath snagged. Colors bloomed over her like sunrise on water, citrine curiosity along her jaw, periwinkle excitement spiraling her fingertips, and a bright magenta optimism that fluttered in the delicate skin at her throat. She wore white to give the hues room to riot. "Mira of the needle cart," she introduced, thrusting out a hand dusted with sapphire anticipation. Ryan hid his own, nodding in lieu of a shake. She explained that for the upcoming Luminary Festival, she required new tattoo needles, star iron, slim yet unbreakable, and Coppermarch's artisans had pointed her to the silent man who forged metal as if listening to its private laments. Mira spoke in quick, looping sentences, hands painting arabesques in the smoky air. She described her dream, to craft living tattoos that changed not only with emotion, but with music, with moonlight, maybe with stories whispered against skin. Ryan listened, gaze fixed on the crucible, pretending the glow there mattered more than the kaleidoscope in front of him. She noticed, of course, people with so many feelings couldn't fathom a void. "You keep your colors tucked under the anvil," she teased during her second visit, leaning over the workbench. The teasing carried no malice. Her chartreuse playfulness proved that. Still, Ryan's jaw set like cooling steel. "The anvil's where they belong," he answered. Too curt. Mira's tattoos fluttered in startled silver, then steadied into calm teal. "Well," she said softly, "even iron carries heat. I can see it, you know. Hiding doesn't suit you." Because she returned every afternoon to observe the needle's birth, the forge filled with chatter Rian had never allowed inside its walls. She tasted the air the way sommeliers tasted wine. "Today, your flames feel melancholic. Did you skip breakfast?" Sometimes she closed her eyes and hummed, and the sparks changed tempo as if answering. She told him a secret on the fourth day. "I was born with an extra sense," she said, voice hushed so the belows wouldn't overhear. "Metal shows me echoes of the heart that shapes it. Not like the normal tattoos. Call it a reflection. When you strike, the iron flares in molten blues and reds no null could create." Ryan nearly dropped the tongs. He wanted to dismiss it as fanciful. Yet she described emotions he buried years ago. Blues of midnight solitude, reds of silent perseverance, a rare flicker of gold whenever the blade balanced perfectly. She saw what he himself denied. That evening he walked the clifftop road home, coat wrapped tight against unseasonable chill. He remembered his sister Lysa, whose riot of scarlet passion once blazed across their modest house. She died during a street brawl, her ink igniting enemies' fear until guards struck her down. In the aftermath, Rian decided feelings were a forge too dangerous for mortal hands. He chose the quiet of iron and the certainty of mathematics. Heat plus carbon equals steel. Emotion over heat equals ruin. If Mira truly saw residue of his forsaken fires, she was staring into a furnace he'd welded shut. The thought both terrified and oddly exhilarated him, a sensation like finding a forgotten kite in the attic on a windy day. As Luminary Festival approached, Copper March's plazas sprouted lantern poles and nightflower garlands. Mira's commission was nearly finished. 30 slender needles rested in oiled silk, points gleaming like frost. Yet a darker preparation rippled beneath the gaiety. Sentinels announced an unprecedented inspection. Nulls had infiltrated 2 border towns, sowing discord by masquerading in illusion paints. Every adult would bare their arms at dusk on festival eve. Ryan's stomach became a crucible of cold iron. Years of evasion had depended on timing inspections with trade trips or feigned illness. This one afforded no excuses. Absence itself would condemn him. While drummers rehearsed festive rhythms in the square, he hammered nails for gallows he feared might hold him. Mira found him after closing hours, sweat bending his spine. She caught the first tremor in his calloused hands and, without asking permission, peeled off a glove. Blank skin met lamplight. No swirls, no flickers. Only scars where cinders had kissed him. Her ink flashed a storm of emotions. Crimson alarm, indigo compassion, radiant ochre determination. "So, the rumors were half right," she murmured. "You lack tattoos, but you're no null. I've seen your colors in every sword you tempered." He pulled away, shame and relief stabbing in equal measure. "What I feel stays in the metal," he whispered. "Tomorrow, the Sentinels won't care about poetic exceptions." Mira paced, glyphs of problem-solving lime green rippling across her calves. "Then, we'll give them proof they understand." Inside the forge's heart, she boiled powdered moonstone, phoenix ash, and shavings from the same star iron needles he had forged. Elements that resonated with her magic. The mixture became ink that shimmered invisibly unless struck by ember light. Most tattoos surface during puberty, Because the body decides ink belongs just beneath the skin, she lectured while grinding pigments. We'll persuade your body tonight. Ryan hesitated. Forgery is treason. Mira tapped his sternum. No, this will be truth. Your truth, coaxed outward. They want to see colors? Let's give them the hues that already haunt your hammers. He removed his shirt for the first time before another since adolescence. Skin pale where soot hadn't darkened it. Mira warmed the ink above the coals until it pulsed. Then, using one of the star iron needles, she traced what she had seen through the metal. A broad band of smoldering ember, red across his shoulders, for loyalty that bore unbearable loads, interlaced with cobalt resilience along his spine. Over his heart, she drew a small, stubborn flicker of gold hope. The process hurt more than he expected, perhaps because it dredged buried memory, perhaps because star iron carried every blow he'd ever dealt. He bled, but the blood sizzled against the ink, binding pigment to flesh. When she finished, nothing seemed different. His skin looked blank as bleached parchment. Mira smiled, exhaustion softening her irises to lilac. Hold a coal near your chest when they call your name. The rest will follow. The next evening, lanterns kindled along Copper Square, their flames swaying like rows of watching eyes. Citizens lined before sentinel officers, who examined arms with clinical boredom. Most tattoos glowed bright in festival fervor. Ryan cued with sleeves rolled, a single amber coal cupped in his palm. Sweat threatened to drown it. Mira stood near the front, a witness if courage failed. When his turn arrived, the officer barely glanced up, until he noticed the nothing on Ryan's forearm. Silence trembled. Ryan felt the weight of every gossip, every suspicious glance he had endured. He thought of his father's crushed helmet, of Lysa's crimson wrath, of Mira bent over his skin, painting redemption. He raised the coal against his collarbone. Light burst across him like sunrise hammered into metal. Ember red unfurled along his shoulders, living flame etched in scrolling filigree. Cobalt rivers flowed down his arms, gold sparked over his heart and through the lattice of old burn scars, turning them into constellations. Gasps rippled outward. Someone clapped, another wept. The sentinel, eyes wide, touched the glowing patterns and jerked back, fingers singed by intangible heat. Authentic, he declared hoarsely, stamping approval on the ledger. Rian released the coal into the officer's gauntlet, where it hissed before dying. Inspection continued, but murmurs about the blacksmith's awakening chased the sentinels down the line like mischievous sprites. Mira found him under the shadow of a garland arch. Her tattoos danced a symphony he couldn't name but wanted to memorize. They said nothing for a while, their shared silence no longer heavy, but wondrous, like standing near a waterfall too beautiful for speech. Eventually, Ryan flexed his arms, watching Cobalt shift with the movement. "They're real," he marveled. Mira grinned. "I told you Iron remembers. You just had to listen back." Festival drums commenced, echoing off cliff walls. Colored lanterns rose into the sky, carrying prayers, promises, and now, Rian's first public heartbeat. Weeks later, townsfolk still entered the smithy, eager to glimpse the living fire that coiled under his sleeves. Children asked for toy swords etched with the same patterns. Lovers commissioned rings forged while he thought of devotion, so their bands would murmur warmth. Mira moved her needle cart into the adjoining workshop, trading wall knocks and lunch pails with him like secret notes. Together they experimented, inks attuned to starlight, bronze that pulsed to harp music, spears that blazed brighter when wielded by the brave. On nights when embers dimmed, they sat on the forge roof, soot and color mingling on their clasped fingers, watching their reflected shades dance across the chimney smoke. Rian still felt fear, anger, sorrow, but now they traced honest paths across skin, warning him when the furnace inside grew too hot. His blankness had not been absence, it had been armor. Mira had tempered it, quenching the blade at the precise instant so it would hold an edge without shattering. He forged better for it. She painted bolder for it. And when they finally kissed, her tattoos burst into a joyous choral so radiant that passers-by thought dawn had arrived early over the cliff tops. Few citizens remembered the sullen man who skulked behind the anvil. In his place stood a smith, whose very skin proved that even iron hearts can bloom if someone is brave enough to see the colors beneath.